Welcome to the Coffee with Jeff and Jason podcast. Tune in for freshly brewed discussion on everything you need to know regarding the automotive industry. Here's your hosts, Jeff Tessier and Jason Harris.
Hey, what's going on, Podcast Nation? Is Jason Harris here, and thanks for joining me and Jeff for another episode of Coffee with Jeff and Jason.
Morning, everyone.
Morning. I'm Jason. That's Jeff.
Got it right this time.
I think the last time I called myself Jeff, didn't I?
Yeah.
How you
Coffee
doing?
hadn't kicked in yet. Not too bad. We're about to get another blast of snow, and
tell me a little bit about that, because I won't tell you what temperature it is here until you tell me what's going on where you are. How much snow you got up?
Right now, we probably got 8 or 9 inches the other day. They said we were going to get a foot, but it was all ice, really, for us down here. So that was fun to get rid of. And then it was kind of cold all weekend, minus 12, minus 13, but sunny. And then we're supposed to get another 14 or 15 centimeters today. We'll see.
Dude, I don't miss that. Just so everyone's watching and listening, Jeff is in Toronto, Canada. I am no longer in Toronto, Canada. I have moved to Nashville, Tennessee. And let me just let me see if I start working here. Let me see if I can get this right. It is currently 17 degrees Celsius. All right. So what is it where you are right now?
Oh, I don't know. It's probably got to be close to zero right now, I would assume.
It is going to be a high for everyone out there that's not in Canada. Today's high for where I'm at is going to be right around 71 degrees.
It's only -1 right now. It's going to fluctuate up to 2 degrees by sometime early tomorrow morning.
2 degrees. That is short weather for Canada, man, right there.
Yeah. Well, the good news is I finally got to use my snowblower.
Yeah, that monster, by the way. I was just at Jeff's house recently, guys, and I was in his garage, and he's got a decent sized driveway, but I'm not talking like a monstrous driveway. But he has a snowblower about the size of a Mini Cooper. That is the physical size of this snowblower. I don't know where in the world he got this thing, but it is huge. It literally looks like you would just. Do you sit in it? Do you strap yourself into it when you drive?
You just self-propelled. You just hang on for dear life because it'll pull you through the driveway. And
dear life, it's got like 30-inch wheels on it or something like that.
Hey, man, 5 or 6 passes and I'm done a double-wide driveway, so it's good.
5 or 6 passes on a monster driveway because the thing is like literally like this big.
Hey, I don't want to be out there for 2 hours. 10 minutes, that's all I need.
There you go. Okay, I bet you everyone's probably now got into the live feed now, so we can actually talk about some serious stuff.
Yep.
But yeah, a lot of cool stuff's been happening. We just got done with the Toronto International Automotive show, the auto show. And that was cool to finally see that back, right? It's been a while.
Yeah, I mean, it was the first year since 2020, right? So
yeah, it's definitely been a while. It's not as big as it used to be. I don't think that's any surprise.
There was quite a few manufacturers that unfortunately weren't participating in it in this year, which we kind of knew that going into the last cycle of shows as well, right? But still, there was still a pretty good event there. There's some neat stuff. There was the EV track. Jeep had their little obstacle course that they would drive you on to show you their PHEV Jeeps, I guess, and how they could still articulate and climb mountains. So that was pretty neat.
I actually thought that was kind of cool. I mean, I think it's cool to actually see the experience. I remember when Land Rover first started putting those things at the dealerships, and I wanted a Land Rover simply because of what it could do on these tracks. You know, just go up, hill like this, go down rocks, flip side to side. I mean, it was just, you know what? I think the cool thing, and I'm seeing this actually kind of as a trend right now with a lot of manufacturers, is that their marketing is getting back to, I don't want to say the basics, but it's getting back to the experience of the vehicle. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Subaru has got that one nailed down the last few years, but you're starting to see other people embrace that experience level of what you can do. This vehicle fits your lifestyle because of this. And maybe that's what garners your interest in it, right?
Yeah, no, it definitely is some lifestyle, vehicles. Like I was looking at the new Mercedes. I think I actually texted you
Yeah.
today, right? Like the new Mercedes E-Class just came out with its new interior, and it's like, what is it, like
Unreal.
60 inches of screen or something like that, or 50 inches of screen or something silly like that, right? But it's just the entire dash. You have, you have your system for the driver, you have the center console system, and then you have a screen system for the passenger as well. And it's just the blending of technology and design to create experience. Again, it's cool. It's cool to see, stuff like that kind of come back into play, because I think for the longest time, we haven't been seeing that as a core message in a lot of marketing messages, or just a lot of OEMs in general out there. It's just, it hasn't been about the experience. And then to top it off with EVs, and then at the show, they had the entire EV track where you can go out there and,
Yep.
test drive everything from the Kia EV6 to the Tesla to the Volkswagen. Was that the ID4? Did I say it right? Probably not.
Yeah. Yeah, there was quite a few vehicles there. VinFast was there with their
Fast, yes.
VF8 and 9s. Hopefully they'll have some cars by the summer, but you
Talk about
know,
an interesting model there, right? I'm still trying to wrap my head around their battery subscription model. Like, if you gone on their website, like the pricing is like really obvious. I think it's like a 20 some odd $1,000 delta
well,
between
I think it was
buy
about
for
10 grand, but you can do either the
okay.
loose subscription of 250 to 300 depending on which model you chose.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I think it's a 10 grand difference in price if you're buying it. I think it's more for the technology savvy person who's going to want to upgrade, but I still don't understand how that's going to work because we've never seen that yet, right? So wrapping your head around that concept becomes difficult.
I don't know. I
Usually,
think that there could be some, it could remove some fear of like battery, uh, degenerating over a period of time,
yep.
which people's is concerned right now with pre-owned EVs and stuff like that. Like, what is the battery, you know, strength, or a lifespan? Actually, I saw a new company came out. I ran into them at NADA. I thought this was super interesting. They were actually putting now kind of certifications on pre-owned EVs,
Okay.
and actually running a test on them, so you can actually see what the battery capacity is on a pre-owned EV. So you could actually get a report and say, hey, the current battery is still at 93% capacity from when it left the manufacturer.
That's good because I think it's the biggest fear with current customers looking for those pre-owns, right?
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
know, you'll see various EV or plug-in hybrids out there, right? The previous manufacturer that I worked for would get some slack because they had a battery management optimization unit that would basically catch trigger points along the whole way and protect the battery during that, and it would need optimizations. But unfortunately, when it would get to those lower points, it would limit what it could have out. So customers might think they have an issue simply bringing it in for a quick fix. Unfortunately, our dealers sometimes get a little aggressive and they might charge 5 or 6 hours for something that really is a 5 minute task. Yes, it may take a couple hours to do, but it's 5 minutes of man work, right? So, but making sure that those vehicles would fit the bucket to make sure that those customers are looked after. I mean, a lot of these companies have 10-year warranties on those batteries, right? I think VinFast is also doing a 10-year complete vehicle warranty, right? So,
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. I mean, I think that's kind of impressive. The manufacturer's willing to go out there and do stuff like that. But then, like I said, it's all kind of coming back, and I think the timing's perfect. I think the timing's perfect. I think, look, I think the customer wants to own a vehicle differently. Um, I also think the dealership needs to look at not just look, the OEMs have stepped up their game as far as the ownership experience. I think that's fair to say. I think technology has done that in a big way,
yeah.
right? And now I think it's up to the dealer to kind of say, all right, how am I going to step up kind of my purchase experience, right? Ownership
Well, yeah,
ownership
it's not getting
experience.
Joe that can fog a mirror just to talk about it. It's understanding the vehicle that they're embracing it as well, right? Like a lot of some dealers have done a great job at that. They embrace it. They've got a technology expert or an EV experts there, or many that have adopted that, but they understand it fully, right? Maybe they even have one and they can express how it is in their daily life. It's
But
not
I mean, we were
selling
kind
a
of talking
vehicle anymore,
earlier.
right?
No, you're 100% right. But we were talking about this because we had a few topics. We actually, guys, just so you know, we do occasionally show up to this thing with some level of a plan of possibly what we may or may not talk about. The last 10 minutes was not on our list at all. I think it's just because we had such
It's
a good time at
random.
the Toronto Auto Show. And I just think there were some things that we saw and we identified I'm seeing vehicles become more of there's an ownership experience that's exciting behind it. I mean, I've talked about this on probably a previous episode of our morning chats, but I've recently put a deposit down on a Rivian R1S, the 3-row SUV with 4 motors, 800 horsepower, and like 1,000 pounds of torque or something like that. Tim Allen coming out in me, man. Look, I gotta be honest, I'm excited about that. I'm excited about the vehicle because it provides me an owner experience that hits every single note just for me, right? It's a 3-row SUV. I can take the entire family and my dog camping, which to me I love doing, right? So
Yep.
that it's the note for me. It's over 800 horsepower and like over 1,000 pounds of torque. The entire vehicle, fully loaded, still does 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. It satisfies the Tim Allen inside of me, right? And then not only that, it's got 4 separate motors, which provides it one of the most advanced all-wheel drive off-road systems out there. It
Bar
can
none.
control,
Yeah, that's huge.
yeah, it can fully control both torque and tire and speed ratio and tire spin ratio at the individual tire. All right, and then they put a bunch of steel plates on the bottom of it, and I'm ready to take this thing off-roading with a hydromagnetic suspension on it that can lift it almost another 10 inches up. Like I'm like,
So
I'm excited.
you're already giddy inside already. Don't even have the thing yet. But
I don't even have the bloody thing.
what's been going on? Talk about what's been going on with that. Like
Well, I think the coolest thing I think and this is I think kind of goes into what opportunity the dealers have. I look like you remember I put a deposit on a Ford F-150 Lightning, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, I got two emails, one from Ford acknowledging that they received my deposit, two saying that I was ready and I just needed to talk to a dealership about putting my order in, and that's when things kind of started to fall apart. I was just kind of like, yeah, I'm fine. You know what I mean? So the entire time frame was probably around a year, 12 months, maybe 10 or 12 months. And I had 2 forms of contact from them. So Rivian has created their own social network, and it's comprised of both technicians and employees and owners, and they're just excited and love the product. But I get a daily
That's
email
amazing.
called, and isn't it amazing, called Rivian Stories. All right. And Rivian Stories can be anything from owners to technicians to employees. And they're stories about sometimes themselves, sometimes a lot of the times about the product or how they use the product, or a trip that they took to Moab, or a trip that they did through, Western Canada or something like that. Or, just there are these stories that I get to bite-sized stories that I get to eat up every single day. And like I said, it's going to be over a year until I see this thing, but I
But they're
feel
keeping you
connected to
excited.
the
You're
brand.
connected to it. Exactly.
Well, I'm actually talking to people online that currently own the vehicle.
Yeah.
So
So now
it's
you're
kind of a
you're
little
getting
social.
user daily experience stories already, and
100%. I'm already finding out things that are quirky and maybe not be working, and I'm already making notes of stuff I'm gonna make some adjustments to when I get it, because these people already had that problem, right?
yeah.
Somebody took it through 4 feet of water when it's only supposed to be in 3 feet of water, and this and this and this happened. It's like, okay, well, and this is how they fixed it, and technicians are coming back saying that's not a bad idea. It's actually becoming more of a community. It's actually funny when I watch through some of these conversations how much of a community involvement, even in the product development side, is that they're actively watching and listening to the consumers that are actually using the product, and they're making changes.
Based
You know,
upon that. Yeah.
you know what? This has got through. Okay, so I heard this recently. I know we're probably not even going to get to any of the topics we actually
That's
thought we
okay.
were going to get to
This is still all good
today.
stuff.
This is how we do this. All right, check this out. I like this. All right, business owners out there. Let me take a moment because I got to get Austin, make sure he cuts this into a single snippet. Austin, you ready? Going to cut this? All right. Business owners, are you a thermometer or a thermostat for your business? That makes let that sink in for a second, right? Like, are you a thermometer or a thermostat for your business, right? Do you sit there and just gauge the temperature of your business, or do you actively participate in the temperature, either good or bad? And I thought about this for a while, and I'm like, man, that is a very different mindset when it comes to being kind of an operator. It's like, when I come into a room, does the room go cold or does the room warm up? You know, and am I taking enough time to kind of feel out the temperature on my business from both my customer side, but also from my employee side?
Yeah.
Right? Like, think about it. Like, we don't. It's funny because this actually took me a minute to kind of process. I got to be 100% honest with you. It took me a minute to process because, Jeff, you know me, I love doing everything by numbers, right?
Yeah.
So, like, it took me a minute to kind of really kind of wrap my head around this one. Go, am I a thermostat or am I a thermometer? And what do I bring to the table when I walk into the room? And I'm thinking, what? I don't think I spend enough time intentionally being a thermometer. I don't. I think what I do is I'll look at the stats as far as what we're doing business wise, and what's our gross margins, what's our churn rate on clients, what's I do that. So I have maybe I'm able to take a temperature reading kind of on the business structure.
Are you able to
Of
adjust
the
it to reflect
business.
where you want it to be?
But I don't think I spend enough time taking a temperature reading on the employees. Look, Jeff, you know me. I'm one of the first ones to admit I've had 2 operations managers go full Jerry Maguire on me. You're not going to go Jerry Maguire on me, are you, Jeff?
No.
No.
I don't think so.
But I have. And look, this is just me being open and honest. I've had 2 operations manager go fully Maguire, full Jerry Maguire. Like, I'm leaving. Who's coming with me? And I think back on that, and it's like, what can I have learned from that? And yes, at the time I was being the thermometer to my business and looking at the margins and looking at the profitability and saying, yes, everything looks great. This is a good place, it's a good temperature, it's a nice 72 degrees, and I'm just feeling good, right? But I don't think I took the time to take the thermometer test on my staff, or even on sometimes the customers.
Yeah.
And I think maybe sometimes we do it on the customers because sometimes it's a little bit easier through Google reviews and other type of formats of CSI or SCI or whatever the hell you want to call it, any type of customer satisfaction index, net promoter score, whatever one you want to put out there. But I don't think we necessarily do enough of that with the staff. So I loved it. What are your thoughts? Do you like?
Yeah, I'm a
overseeing the
person who
team?
doesn't like to micromanage, so I wouldn't wanna be in somebody's face personally, and that's how I rent with a dealership, but you still have to take some time to get back to the fundamentals and making sure that those employees are feeling as part of the plan. Maybe that's including them in some possible suggestions, of how we might improve business opportunities or what they feel is going on, how their approach might be, and how they can better for themselves and for the company, right? So if we have a better understanding of where they are each day, then I think happy customers are happy, right? But what about our staff? If they're not as happy, how do we expect our customers to be happy, right?
No, you're exactly right. And I think to do that, you have to be able to take a thermometer. But that's one thing. It's one thing to be able to take the temperature.
And
It's a
know what to
whole
do with
other thing. Exactly. Right.
it.
That's why, like, it was funny. I heard this statement and it just kind of like, huh. It stopped me for a second, right? Because I think I've actually done a pretty decent job of taking the temperature and understanding the temperature of my business, and sometimes my clients. Maybe I didn't do as good of a job with my employees, and I think I'll continue to do better at that. But it's one thing to have the data; it's another thing to do something with it.
And to know.
Like, I mean, well, yeah, right. I mean, it's like how
Not
do
burying
you?
your head in the sand and just, oh, this will just blow over.
100%. Let's talk about and I think this is a perfect segue kind of into our next topic when we're talking about inventory challenges. Like I'm telling you right now, like when it comes to like inventory challenges, there is a vastly different temperature going on at each department. You know, and it's one thing to take the temperature. I think it's another thing as a leader, of how we actually address that and either cool it off or heat it up, depending on what's necessary for the business to continue to move forward. But I'd love to get your thoughts on kind of like, from a leadership perspective, because like I think people understand, like there's some data perspectives out there, right? Like, you're looking at, this type of this type of to market valuation, right? And if you're at, if you're between 90 and 100% and your turn rate on is less than 28 days, and you have the right formula to move your vehicles, blah, 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 blah. No, I'm talking more of like leadership from a leadership perspective. How do you handle the inventory challenges? Love to get your thoughts. And this goes both ways, right? This is with no cars, and then maybe having cars that are aging and overpriced. Like there's just so many challenges right now.
Yeah, I think there really is, right? I mean, on the news side, we've seen the past year and a bit massive major challenges, and some are still ongoing, right? Depending on your manufacturer currently in the status. So we continue to struggle with that. And then there are some manufacturers that are able to now provide vehicles that maybe aren't as desirable to maybe the staff or what the staff feels the customer is looking for. Maybe some lower trim models. I know I was talking with a colleague of mine the other day, and they seem to have quite a few cars, but it wasn't any of the ones they were looking to fulfill their orders on, right? So how do we re-engage our staff to be part of it? I remember back in the day having a dealership, guys didn't want the quartz brown Outlander because it was not their cup of tea. But it's not about their cup of tea, right? It's about how they can find somebody for that. So, and I think if we work with our staff to help them better understand the challenges that we've been through, we've already come through these things. We can continue on, right? So whether that be on the new side, the used is becoming a struggle again because market values are up and down like crazy and all over the place, right? So it's really hard to know where to buy, but just making sure that they're aware of what the parameters are within and doing your best. I mean, what else are you going to do? You can't just sit back and wait for pricing to stabilize or vehicles to just magically be available in the high trim lines that everybody's searching for, right? So,
well, look, I love the thing that you say. You just said proactive. That's why I translate, right? We have to be proactive, right?
mhm.
I know I'm getting totally stuck on this whole like thermostat analogy, but no, let's go for this for a second, okay? When it's too hot, all right, or if it's too cold in a room, you go over there and you push the necessary buttons. Meaning you take action. There's some action that you take, right?
Yep.
But it's not immediate, is it?
Nope.
Like I can't I can't make a room go from 65 degrees to 71 degrees. And I'm doing this in Fahrenheit just for all the Americans that are watching this. You get Canadians understand what
We
I'm
could
talking
figure it out.
about. You can figure it out.
Who the heck
Um,
keeps their temperature at 72? That's what I want to know.
but you know what I mean, though. Like,
I'm cheap.
Do you know how much that costs? I can hear my
I sound
father.
like my dad now, man.
Yeah. You know how
Well,
much
you're
that
right. I mean, my Nest, I just literally had to turn mine up from 18, which is probably 66 or something like that, up
And then
to
what does your Nest tell
20.
you? What does it
And
say
it
when you
says
do it?
it'll be there in 35 minutes or 40 minutes or whatever it might say, right?
There
So
we go.
at
See?
least understanding, I like your analogy there, right? Understanding that, yes, you can make the input and positive reaction, but it's not going to happen like that. It's going to
It
take some
isn't.
time.
It's going to take some
And maybe
time.
some tweaks along the way, right? Because maybe your programs like mine, my thermostat is programmed to drop back down again at certain times of the day, but there might be a cold wind outside and I need it to come up. So I might have to react again. It's not just a set and forget.
No, look, I mean, if you're like me, you're kind of fiddling with it kind of all the time, right? Like it's just like, and but it's true though, but you have to take that on each department and sometimes
Yeah.
almost each employee. But understand that the action that you're taking is actually going to take time for it to unfold, and then you might come back and go, "Oh shit, that's too hot," and you need to bring it back down, right? Like there's kind of this ebb and flow. I don't know, I'm so stuck on this analogy, but I think it's fun,
No, I
right?
like it.
So to me, like at my house, I actually have like 2 units. I have 2 units because it's a big place. So there's like one for the upstairs and one for the downstairs. Now, of course, what ends up happening is I turn down the downstairs one, and hot air rises, and then it affects the upstairs one. And so, like, I'm constantly maintaining this ebb and flow back and forth. But I think it's the exact same thing, though, in our business. It's the exact same thing. It's like, it's like, yes, I need to kind of control the temperature of how we're dealing with this. And then not only talk about inventory shortages, and after inventory shortages, inventory pricing, an increase in inventory depending on your OEM. If you're some of the OEMs right now have more inventory than they know what to do with. Like, there is so many different temperatures going on. I think to be a business owner, you really need to be that thermostat, but you have to be proactive with it. I mean, then tack on another thing like interest rates.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Talk about the temperature. What do you think the temperatures of most buyers out there right now are looking at these interest rates?
It's unreal. I mean, the last I saw from my previous manufacturer, your standard rate on an Outlander was 699 or something like that. Like, that's not something we've ever seen, right? And it wouldn't matter what your
I saw
length of journey.
leasing rates of
Yeah,
8.99%.
it's crazy.
Leasing.
Yeah, well, I was looking at the Chrysler Pacifica, came up on my feed on the weekend, and I was like, is it time to get a van? I don't know. Maybe this is a message. And then I was going through, the lease rate was, like you said, it was high. It was around 9.9, I think, or 10. Some, I can't remember. It was blew my mind. And I
Yeah.
was just like, this is crazy. Now, it depended on your terms and all that stuff, but it was actually mind blowing as a consumer going, do I really want to pay that much interest on a vehicle that's going to cost me anywhere from $50,000 to $70,000?
No, you're 100% right. I mean, but I still think it's kind of funny when we think of interest rates. We were so accustomed and
Oh,
used to
we
low
thought that
interest
was the norm, right? Because it was there
that
for
that was
12
the
years.
norm. I remember doing a podcast with a gentleman and goes, I remember when Ford first launched 9.99%. And this wasn't that long ago. It would have been the 90s, right? Or mid or late 90s. It was like, it was the craziest times. We sold more Ford Crowns and da da da. I don't know. It's Focuses probably, but whatever they are.
Pintos.
I think people have a tendency of kind of forgetting. Yeah, exactly. But people have a tendency of kind of forgetting, kind of how great things have been, but we got so accustomed to it. But I think what that does is that affects the temperature of the customer.
For sure.
And it's like, I think as a business, it's like, so this is one
Well,
thing
you
I
gotta
find
deliver
really
more value now for sure. Absolutely, right?
Exactly. I mean, think about this. That they're coming in now with a totally different temperature than they had before because, like, nobody, everybody still remembers the last car they purchased. They purchased at 0% or 0.99, and now they're coming
For
in,
8
they're buying
years or
another
something
vehicle.
crazy.
Yeah, for 84 months at 0.99% or 0% for 84 months, whatever the hell it was. And now they're purchasing a vehicle, at 60 months at 6.99%. And you would be crazy to think that there's not going to be a different temperature with that customer. And I think, like anything, I think we can be prepared. I think preparation is what we were kind of talking about earlier. Like, how can a dealership be prepared, to handle, that kind of tempered, customer? Like, it doesn't feel good. It's not going to be great, but I think it's our responsibility as operators and owners, that we do our best to address that. And, if we need to, bring as many warm blankets as possible.
Hot cocoa. No, but, if you can get everybody to understand, right? It's that shock again. If I'm a salesperson and I'm not happy with a 7% interest rate, and I would never buy that, it's hard for me to get over that. But how is that, if that is our kind of normal situation right now, we still need to be able to fulfill those sales to customers and complete our tasks, right? So training our staff to coach them and understand this is competitive in its mindset, in its market. It's what we're dealing with. How can we best gauge it for our customers? What's the best plan of attack? Helping them to be sympathetic with the customers and understanding and making the right choices along their purchase journey. And that really is going to deliver an exceptional customer value that will go a long ways, right? Versus, well, this is the rate, you got to take it, right? So and additionally, we're going to charge you an extra $5,000 in stock premium. Like there's two different ways you can go about this.
No, but you're right though. I think there are ways that we can be proactive and just kind of addressing some of those additional expenses. And I mean, I also think it depends on how you operate your business. If you're operating for the short term, if you're operating for the long term. And you know what? I think owners out there really need to make sure that is spoken, right? And that your leaders below you that are really overseeing the dealership believe in the same things that you believe. Because I've had several conversations now over the last couple of weeks where there's been a big disconnect between what ownership or the owners believe as far as the direction and that we should be handling business in the temperature of the industry and the temperature of the economy, the temperature of pricing of vehicles, the temperature of interest rates. Just how do we address all those things? I was with one particular dealership recently, and they're a good friend of mine. But what the owner thought the temperature was versus how it was actually being executed at the dealership was far, far, far from being the exact same thing. And I think it's just this is where you can see real operators shine. You can see the ones that really kind of step up, and you can even mention it, staffing, right? And this is kind of goes back into that staffing. Is your staffing and your training in line with what your business objectives are?
Yeah.
Are you being short term or are you being long term in this? You know me, I've always played the long term, so I'm not a big fan of short term games. For long term, or I'm a much bigger fan of long term success versus short term games. That's what I was trying to say. But it's funny. I was just thinking of those two people that we met when we were at the auto show. These two younger people in the industry.
Yeah.
I wish I got their information because I'd love to give them a shout out. But they came up to me and they talked to me for a while. And it's funny, these people have been in the business now for 2 years and they've never known anything different than 6.99%. And they're flying high. Yeah. They're doing well. They weren't complaining. They also didn't know anything differently about having 400 cars on the lot versus only having 40.
Yep.
The last 2 years,
they've been able to embrace the challenge and succeed in it, right? So
100%. And I think I think we're going to have staffing and training issues and leadership issues, and I think there's just a lot of opportunity out there for us to become very good at not only taking the temperature of our business and our employees and our customers, but also being the thermostat to every element of
control it. Yeah.
100%. Hey, I know we're getting towards the tail end of our conversation, but before I let you go, is there anything else you kind of wanted to add? Was there last thoughts that you had before I let you go?
No, I think that pretty much covers it for us today. I mean, there was a few other things we can put into another podcast because we overloaded this one.
We go squirrel all the time, man.
But it's all
podcast.
Hey, you can take the pieces you like and put them all together.
100%, man. Hey, well, thanks for taking the time to jam with me today. This has been a lot of fun. For everybody out there watching and listening, this has been an episode of Coffee with Jeff and Jason. I am Jason. This is Jeff. Thank you guys so much. Everyone, you have yourself an amazing day.
Enjoy your afternoon, guys.
Thanks for tuning in to the Coffee with Jeff and Jason podcast with your hosts, Jeff Tessier and Jason Harris. Don't want to miss out on new content? Be sure to check out the full podcast library at strategywithjason.com to stay in the know. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Happy podcasting.